Hi everyone, Tally and Farrell here from Board of It, and welcome to the third in our series of Best Board Games for Two Players, not specifically designed for two players.
If you're new to us or this series, there's a very simple reason behind it, and that is that if people are looking for two-player games, you can very easily find lists of the best two-player games, but you can't find lists of games that easily for games that you can play at two players. You can also play with more players, because obviously a lot of games, if they can go up to 3, 4, 5, 6, and you can still play with two, are they any good? Do you get the same feeling? Do you have the same interaction? Are they even worth your money if you're not going to be playing it at 3 or 4? And I think a good example would be a game like Root, which is very limited at two players without the expansion. That kind of lets you add in AI factions, but if you play with 3 or 4, it's an excellent game. So we're going to go through a series of games and we're going to talk about what the game is in case you don't know it. We're going to say why is it good at two players? How does it change with more players? Does it change at all? And then we're also going to say maybe a few things that we like about it and why we recommend it. But we're going to timestamp all of this so you can skip ahead to games that you care about or that you're interested in. And please, if you find this helpful, like and subscribe. It would mean a lot to us. Give us your own recommendations. Tell us what you think of ours and all that stuff. But let's begin.
So first up, we have My City, which is a tile-laying legacy game in which you'll be building your own personal city using polyomino tiles, and the story is going to evolve over 8 chapters. And each new chapter is going to add something new into the mix, a new mechanism or new goals or
Stickers.
Something new to think about. More stickers, lots of stickers onto your own personal player board. It's really cool because you flip cards and that is going to tell you which puzzle piece that you need to do. So everyone is doing the same puzzle at the same time and figuring out where to fit that one specific piece into their personal city. So the reason why we really enjoyed playing this at 2 is because there's basically no player interaction. Well, there is no player interaction. The card will flip, tell you what puzzle piece to put into your city at that moment, and you just have to sit and figure it out for yourself, basically.
And I think you're supposed to do it pretty quickly as well, right? You're supposed to do it immediately, I think the game says.
Exactly.
So you just get this and you'll go, slam it down somewhere.
So even if you had 3 or 4, the game would still move along at the same, it should still move along at the same pace than it does at 2, because you're supposed to flip the card and very quickly put that tile. You're not allowed to take too long. I suppose there is a little bit of competition for some of the goals. If you're the first to meet certain objectives, that you're going to get certain stuff. We can't give it away too much because it is a legacy game. But yeah, we really, really enjoyed our campaign with just two players. We couldn't get enough of it. I think we had to almost slow ourselves down.
No, we just went straight through and got it done in about a week.
We did, I was a little bit sad. 24
games, but each game only takes honestly 10, 15 minutes max. So you do hammer through it, that's the problem. But like you said, it was an absolute joy to play, and it's just that the only difference is kind of the prizes that are given at the end of each episode to the winners, losers, because changes based on how many players there are, but none of the other gameplay changes at all. And that only does minor, you'll get a sticker on your board, and now you have a rock instead of a tree, and you need to cover that up or something. You get a point for it, and that's the only difference. And it's already gets a little bit asymmetrical in how you put your puzzle pieces as you play, because anyone can start anywhere within the beginning rules, so to speak, I think along the river. But so this is one that I almost I wish we'd played it with more, but it would have also been hard to play it as much as we wanted with more people, is the thing. But at 2, it's again, no interaction. So.
I suppose it was just if you had more people, it's more people to share the frustration with, or to gloat if you found a really great place in your puzzle to fit that particular piece, and everyone around you is groaning because they can't fit it. That would be the only reason I think why you would, play at more versus 2. So
Yeah, so gameplay wise, no difference. Get it for 2, get it for 4, up to you.
Next up, we have Nidavellir, which is for 2 to 5 players. It's a bidding set collection game where you'll be going around to various taverns trying to recruit a dwarven army to fight the evil dragon. You'll be making a bid each round with your coins that have values on them, and the person who bids the highest in that particular tavern gets to pick their card first.
Yes. So yeah, you're trying to get these cards, you're trying to make sets. There's 5 different types of dwarf. They all score differently. And when you get one of every type, you get hero cards, which are really powerful, and they kind of throw some twists and turns into the game. This combination of bidding and set collection is super fun. Just the bidding, because you're bidding so much as well. So 3 times a round, and there's like 8 rounds in the game. So there's a lot of bidding, and obviously it's always fun to reveal and compare to the other players. So weirdly, you wouldn't think this would work at 2 because it's a bidding game, but it actually works just as well as at 3 or 4 or 5, which it goes up to. And honestly, this is one that I really don't think it loses much with less players. And actually, you could say sometimes it's even better, because if you have 4 or 5, you actually lose a round in both halves of the game. And it just feels so much tighter. And even people that had never played, I think, with less before were like, oh, this game's a bit too short. So we would honestly actually almost in some ways prefer it, because you get this full experience. And I think it's a bit lighter as well if you play with 2 players, because you still put a 3rd card at the taverns. So you have more of a pick of cards, especially if you come second, because you might have 2 options, which you won't get in playing with 3 or 4 or 5. So it's basically, it just doesn't lose much. You get the thrill of the bidding. Something that's maybe a bit more fun with more players, but also more tight and tense.
Yeah, and still it's still very, very, very enjoyable at 2.
Yeah.
I think one of the reasons it works well is because, like you said, the cards somewhat scale by player count. So there will be obviously less cards to pick from the less players you have.
Yeah.
It's just that at 2 there is 1 left over.
Yeah.
But it does scale. It's not like there's 5 to pick from. That wouldn't be that exciting. So that scales. Maybe a little bit more for competition for the hero cards with more players, but there's still plenty of heroes, so it's not that tight. So it's tightens a little bit, the competition, but not that much.
Yeah, I think it really is just the main difference is that things get a bit tighter. It's probably harder to get the cards you want because there's more people in play, and you might have less rounds if you're playing with 4 or 5, so that shortens how many cards you get, probably how many heroes you can get. But in terms of the core gameplay in the feel, nothing changes. I honestly would always get this out of 2. I think we even said in our review of it, which we have a review if you want to know more, that even if I knew we were going to play this forever at just 2 players, we'd still keep it in our collection.
Definitely. Yeah, we often just get it out as a quick warm-up or cool-down game with just us 2.
After stressful...
Something
mentally,
really stressful. Yeah.
All right. So that is Nidavellir, and if you want more detail, you can check out our review. Moving on to MicroMacro, Crime City, which is a game we have very much enjoyed recently in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
I mean, we've actually, because it's a very short game, we've been savouring it. So if you don't know what MicroMacro is, it's essentially, think of Where's Waldo or Where's Wally, but throughout time, in that you have this giant table-spanning map, and it's populated with anthropomorphic cartoon characters, like animal people. It's almost, if you've ever seen Matt Groening, who created The Simpsons, old rabbit cartoons, it's very much in that style. And they're all committing crimes. It's actually quite a dark game, but it's also funny because of the juxtaposition of this cartoon world with all these weird crimes.
Bunnies murdering foxes.
Yeah. So you spread out this big map on the table and you get cases, and they tell you, so this guy had his balloon stolen as a made-up one. He was seen buying it at this stall. Where did he go afterwards? And then you look for this stall, and then you look like where he went, because everything's either forwards or backwards in time. So each scene with this person is like a different point in the timeline, basically. So it's quite clever. It's quite fun, and a lot of laughs, actually, I think we can say. Just because, again, this juxtaposition of like, you have like these people like adultery and murder, and yeah, it's quite dark.
It's described as like a soap opera.
Yeah, it's very soap opera like, actually. But yeah, so why is it good or better at 2 players? So sorry, this also goes from 1 to 4 players, is what I'm saying.
So the reasons are twofold. As Farrell mentioned, how you solve the crimes is going forwards and backwards in time. So we feel like it's actually more ideal for 2 people or less than any more, because you can only really follow forwards or backwards the characters. So I think with 3 or 4, there wouldn't be so much for the 3rd or 4th person to do.
Yeah.
And because of that, you're already trying to find some very specific things in a very busy, crowded map. We already get in each other's way with
shadows
2 people.
And light.
Get out of the way. You're in my way. I'm looking here.
Your elbows on the hot dog stand.
So we can only imagine with even 1 more person.
Yeah.
It would just be too crowded. Very difficult to look at everything you wanted to on the map, and you just have to be quite specific with following the trail. The animations are very small, and sometimes it's very easy to miss a detail. So if there's 3 or 4 people all crowded around this map looking for very small, tiny details, we actually just think it would be too much. So definitely one that we prefer playing with 2.
Yeah.
Or you could play it solo, of course, as well, and that would be still very fun.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. I think also one of the things is that, because you're always looking for something, like, what is the motive for the murder? And it's a very singular thing that you're looking for. And with 4 people, you're all, one of you's going to see it, and then 3 people basically haven't done anything.
They're a bit redundant.
So it's one of those things where with 2 you kind of balance it off generally, because you'll both be looking. But because
you follow the steps, right? So to solve an entire crime might be 5 steps. And you only can complete 1 step at a time, basically. So it's not like you have 5 steps and you can all look for 5 things, because you don't know what that next step is.
You go logically through the clues, basically. Yeah. Usually starting from the dead body and like working backwards.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think, it's not something I would play with more. But you can, so that's the point, right? So best with 2 players, I think, easily, or 1. Yeah, I think best with 2, because it's funny to share it with someone. That's the thing.
Yeah.
It would be, it's like this level where the balance of, it would be funnier with 4 people, but then more people wouldn't be doing anything at the same time, because part of the fun is like talking about these crimes and sharing them. But yeah, so it's a small box. It's pretty inexpensive. We're big fans. I think not criticism, but you should know that obviously once you solve these crimes, then you're done. Like there's not really that much to do, and they're quite short and relatively easy. I think like they're not brain busters. I think
it's more about the fun of doing it, isn't it? It's not actually particularly difficult. I mean, it could be fun if they were more complex, actually, if they had some really difficult ones, but the ones we've done so far, they're just easily solvable.
We've got 4 or 5 left now because we've been rationing them.
Yeah. But the good thing is you could regift it to someone. It's not like you destroy anything in the game. So even though it might be over quite quickly, you can give it to a friend.
Yeah, exactly. I was thinking it's the thing that you could let like your friends or family borrow, and then in like a year or 2 or 3, like grab it back and then do it again when you've forgotten.
Yeah.
Basically, I think. But they're also bringing out a sequel in August. So yeah. So we would say try out MicroMacro Crime City, get on that. I think this has just been starting to be restocked everywhere, has been restocked everywhere because it's sold out. Although it's probably sold out again now because Shut Up and Sit Down talked about it. So get this as soon as you can if it in any way interests you. But yeah, so MicroMacro Crime City.
So we're going to talk about Anno 1800 by brass Birmingham designer Martin Wallace. It's a game for 2 to 4 players. It's an economic cube management game in which you'll be building your own island society, trading goods, and making sure that your citizens are well fed and happy. It's a lot about supply chain management, a lot of knock-on effects, and you always have to be planning some turns ahead to make sure that you have enough resources to do the next action, and then the next action, and then the next action.
Yep. So I think it's a lot of, like you said, so cube management in that the cubes are workers, or they represent goods. I guess they represent workers manufacturing goods. And it's basically you have these little industries on your board, and then you say, okay, well, I want a better industry. So then you send a guy to coal and you send a guy to bricks or something, and then you have something else, something more advanced.
Always creating something out of something.
Yeah,
out
exactly.
Of something else.
So, and then so you start with some very, very basic industries. So there's potato farming, I guess. You have brick working. And then, it gets more and more complex, and you have different types of workers. And each worker you have generates a card. And this is, like you said, what they want, basically. They have needs. So this lady wants a sausage, a beer, and some champagne. Yeah, well, they both.
We both went for alcohol.
And you have to fill it. But that means that you'll need to build a factory that makes champagne, and that's several levels up the rung, and you move cubes around. And
to make the champagne, you need glass, and
exactly.
you have to have all of the prerequisites to make things, and
So, but this is probably the game that will change the most, depending on player count, out of all the ones we're going to talk about, or have talked about. And this is because these industries that we're talking about, they're all the kind of upgraded ones. They're all on a central shared board. And there's only 2 of each of them, which then means if you're playing with 4 players and a few people all need sausages or tins or schnapps, then only 2 of you are going to get them. But what you can always do is you can trade, and you have these trade tokens from building ships, and you basically say, depending on like the level of that industry, is how many trade tokens you need to spend. So you can say, okay, well, I don't have any schnapps, but Tally does. So I can spend 1 trade token, and that counts for schnapps because I'm trading with her, and she gets a gold in return. And so what's going to happen is that at 2 players, it's really fun. We've probably played it maybe the least of all the games we're going to talk about as well, but we've played it a few times in quick succession, and we've really enjoyed it.
It's very addictive.
Yeah,
we wanted to keep playing every time that we played.
It's not quite like Brass Birmingham, but it's got some DNA there, and it's also a bit like Vindication as well in terms of moving cubes around. And like this cycle of like always getting bigger and better. But so that's the thing, is that it's great at 2. You get the game, you get the core of the game, you get this kind of expanding your industry and being able to do more and more and more, and it, like maxing out your turns. But at 4 players, you're just going to get 3 or 4 players, you're going to get a bit more interaction and trading. So maybe I can't build something because Tally has what I need. And then I can go, well, if you build me a penny farthing factory, I'll build you a steam engine. And you kind of have to make these deals and these trades and combine with other players more, which you don't need to do necessarily. You still do it 2 players. So that's another thing that's not that different. Because sometimes if Tally's made something really complex and I'm like 5 steps away from that, I might as well just spend 3 trade tokens rather than going through it. So you get a bit of both, but it'll just be a bit more interactive, and you'll have to do a bit more wheeler-dealer and negotiation.
I guess the thing is, even with more players, nobody can stop you trading with them. It's not optional. So I would just say to another player, hey, I'm going to buy the windows off of you, and there's nothing they can do about it. So that's the same at any player count, because they can't say, no, I want to trade with someone else, or it's just an action. And they can't do anything about it. So it's not a barrier. No.
I think it will change, but the point is we very much enjoy this. And the point of this video is that games are good at 2 players, games are good at 4 players, even if they change, which we've done in our previous series as well. So so that is Anno 1800. And good for 2 to 4 players. So I think at the moment the English versions are just starting to come out. I think it was only German for a year or so. So you might be able to get this soon, hopefully. But to be honest, actually, it's pretty language independent. So if it's something you really want, actually, you could get the German version because you only need it for the rules, which you can just read online.
True.
If you couldn't get it.
Yeah.
Because everything's symbology and it's all quite clear.
I guess just knowing what the products are, but you could just learn that from the symbols.
Yes, that's true. You can make up your own names. It's funner.
That's true.
To call them weird stuff.
Yeah.
All right. So, Anno 1800, and we'll go on to our next game.
So, moving on to our next game, which is Railroad Inc. We have the Deep Blue edition specifically. So, this is a roll and write in which you'll be throwing some dice and there'll be some roads and railways, and you basically have to draw them onto your own personal board and optimize your network in your city, let's say, to get the most points at the end. The reason why it's just as much fun at 2 players than at more players is because it literally does not change in any way. The turns just consist of throwing the dice, figuring out where you're going to put them on your own personal player mat, drawing them on, next turn. It's really, there's just nothing, nothing. In fact, it's actually quite a solitary game, isn't it? Because you're really just working on your own city, on your own personal player mat. So actually, maybe better at 2 because in a group, maybe you want to talk, and I guess it depends on the situation.
Yeah, I mean, I think it doesn't matter. It depends what you want from your gaming night, I guess, because it's very much a game that everyone sits quietly and draws on their boards and thinks about the dice that have been rolled and what they can do with them. So it's a quiet game. It's not one you want if you want table talk, but I guess this is kind of the point in that theoretically you could combine the different types together and play with even more because each one of these, it goes up to 6 players. So you could honestly get four boxes and play with 24 and it would be exactly the same because you can have no impact on what any other player is doing whatsoever. But it's also importantly a really good game. We've really enjoyed it. It's one for a very wide range of people. I think you even got your mother it for her birthday recently.
Got it for my mummy, and she's the person that's always saying, that game's too hard for me and I can't do it. Yeah. And she really liked it. Yeah.
So, and I mean, and we play Vital Lacerda games, and we just played Twilight Imperium for 6 hours this week. and we enjoy this fully. Yeah. So this is a really terrific game for 2 players, but not specifically for 2 players. Following up with another roll and write, or flip and write in this case, but of the same genre, we have Welcome to New Las Vegas, which is a sequel to the flip and write Welcome to. And in this one, you're designing your own Vegas and you're opening casinos. You're taking people on a tour of the city in a limo. You're dealing with mobsters. You're building hotels for people to stay in when they go to the casinos. What else are you doing? You're opening shows. You're constructing.
Going to the golf.
Courses. Building golf courses. But so it's pretty simple. You have 3 stacks of cards, and they have a front with a number on them and a back with action, let's say. And you flip them, and then you'll have a 7 and a show card. And you'll have that 3 times, and there might be different numbers and different actions. Then you pick one of these pairs, and you do something with it, and you write it in your city. So you put the number in a casino. So say, this casino is now 7. And then maybe it'll let you use your limo, and you'll draw a little limo route on your map. Yeah. But it's one of these ones that it's very obtuse to learn because there's a lot going on. There's a lot of ways to score points, and you kind of can't half do anything. You have to go fully into it. Sometimes like the limo or the shows. There's a lot of different angles, but it's one of those ones that you play it once and you're like, I get it now. And then it's it's a good puzzle for your brain, but it's not very hard. In a similar way to Railroad Inc., you're just going to be thinking a lot about what to do rather than it being difficult in a rules kind of way. But again, like Railroad Inc., there's not really any player interaction. The only player interaction here is that if somebody completes is it avenue for the hotels?
Yes.
Yeah, because it's street and avenue. So if you complete an avenue and fill it with numbers, then you build that hotel, and then everyone else has to cross it off and build a motel. And also you have 3 objectives, which can trigger the end of the game. And once somebody has got them, like the first person to get them flips it, and then it's worth less points for everyone else, but they can still get it. And that's really pretty much it. You really have no impact on what anyone else does. So again, I mean, this actually says it goes up to 50. So grade at 2, grade at 50. But what do you like about it?
I think I was surprised because we said in one of our look back videos that Railroad Inc. and Welcome to New Las Vegas were our first right games, this being the first flip and right. I was actually surprised how much depth is in this game actually. Yeah. It's kind of short, like we can get a game done with 2 people in 45 minutes or something, maybe less. But there is actually quite a lot going on, a lot of strategy, so I was surprised how much strategy there was. And I think just with regards to it being enjoyable at 2 players, like you said, it's just there's just no player interaction at all. So it just really doesn't matter how many people you're playing it with. Yeah, again, head down, thinking, like not so much table talk. Yeah. More in your own head. At more players, because there's no time limit and how much you can kind of think every round about what you want to draw and what action to take. Maybe with more players, it can be quite a long time between rounds. I remember when we played with a big group of friends, I remember thinking, okay, let's move on now to the next turn. But other people are still thinking about where to put the numbers and everything. So with just the 2 of us, it can be a bit more snappy, I think, as well. But so bottom line is we really enjoy this. We've actually got a review of it as well if you want an in-depth review, thoughts, opinions. So big fans and good at 1, good at 50, good at 2. So this is another recommendation from us. So on to Praga, Caput, Regni, which is a game for 1 to 4 players. It's a Euro game, which we described as the most Euro to ever Euro in our review. You'll basically be taking a series of actions using a rondel wheel and getting associated bonuses in an attempt to impress King Charles. So the player with the most victory points at the end wins the game. Lots of different routes to victory and lots of different ways of scoring points. Yeah. And being a Euro, unsurprisingly, if you know much about Euros, there's very low player interaction. In fact, almost none in this. It's limited to people taking tiles and action tiles that you need, really. But it doesn't really feel any different. Yeah, they take the tile, but you can always get that tile on the next turn. It's just that you might get a slightly worse bonus. So you're never locked out of anything. Yeah. It's just... They might get one that you kind of want or need, but the game is also very much working with what you have and what's available and what you're given. Because if you take the action rondel wheel, there's 2 copies of each action on this rondel wheel. So there's always, if someone takes it, hopefully there's another one. There should be, there'll always be the action on the rondel wheel actually. It's just that when they're used, they become more expensive to take and you have to wait for them because you keep turning this wheel and then the unused action tiles even give you victory points or bonuses or whatever. So you can always actually do whatever action you want as well. It's just that you might have to pay a bit. Yeah. And maybe it gets a bit harder at 3 or 4 players. But again, every route will give you points. So there's no wrong route, otherwise it wouldn't be in the game. Yeah. But it's a really fun Euro, I have to say. It's very quick turns, very snappy. I think all the different options of how to score points is very interesting.
And it also gives you this little constant like joy buzzer in your brain. It's like constant endorphin burst, isn't it? Because everything you do in this game gives you some goodies.
Yeah.
It's like even picking what action you're going to do, there's always a bonus associated with where you're taking it from on this rundle wheel.
Yeah.
Doing the action, you get bonuses. I
think that's why it works so well at 2 versus 3 or 4, because no matter what you do, something is going to get you points, even if it's maybe less points than you could have got, but then your turn will just come back around again, and maybe you make those points up, and it's just points thrown at you constantly. So it really, really doesn't change when you play at higher player counts, and I don't even remember it taking that much longer either. I
mean, it will, but I guess the turns are pretty quick, so...
Yeah.
It's not... I think even if you had a full 4, it's not something that you would be like, oh, it's going to be a bit long.
No, I think this is definitely one, even if we knew we'd never play it again at higher player counts, we would, still always just play at 2 players.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's pretty much all there is to say about that. If you like really classic Euros, then this is definitely one to get. It's got a nice 3D like table presence.
Yeah.
It will scare you when you have to unpack it and unpop everything, but I really enjoy it.
Yeah.
And it's good at any player count.
Yeah, and we have a review of this one, so if you want to hear more details, check that out. So here we have Clans of Caledonia. This is a Euro game for 1 to 4 players, where you're going to take on the role of a clan leader in Scotland, and the goal is to make your clan the most prosperous. And you're going to do this by expanding territory. You're going to be farming, making cheese, making bread, and then selling those goods at the market or fulfilling contracts. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, all things that regular Scottish people do.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so this is being a Euro game. Again, it means generally low player interaction. I think here, the things that will be the most variable is that they have a really dynamic market system in this game, where you can sell and buy from the market, but selling and buying increases or decreases the price based on demand.
Supply and demand.
And this is going to be a lot more variable with more players, so you can depend on when you need to get there and what you need to get less at being at a certain price.
Yeah.
There's also, more players, so there's less land to grab. And also you have these contracts, like you say, to fulfill, and this is where a lot of the victory points come from. And these have this subsystem where when you fulfill them, you move up, you kind of get export goods, basically, I think tobacco and sugarcane and stuff in, and you move these tokens up a tracker. And based on like how far they are along in compared to each other is how many points they're worth for the amount you have. And this is obviously going to be a lot more unpredictable based on more players having more contracts and fulfilling them. So it's a bit more of a minefield to work out. But the moment-to-moment gameplay, it's not going to change because it's very... you do everything on your own. You're building your own farmstead. You're putting cows into play, deploying cows. You're building granaries, you're making whiskey using your clan's ability, which only you can use. And generally, there's just not any ways to impact other players besides indirectly by taking a contract they want or by building next to them, and then you can kind of buy goods they produce for cheap, but it doesn't affect them in any way.
No, I find that doesn't really happen in our games too much anyway.
No, people want to stay apart from each other. Get away from my cows. But yeah, this is a game we really enjoy. I think you're a big fan.
Yeah, I am. Even despite the fact that I'm notoriously really bad at Euros, I really enjoy the genre. And this is definitely one that I do really enjoy. Can't really put my finger on why over other Euros. I guess the theme is pretty cool. We always enjoy it with a glass of Scottish whiskey. I like the contract fulfilling as well. The meeples are cool. And it is pretty fun to try and create the goods that you need for contracts. And there's a little bit of a tension there, which I think maybe is a little bit different from some other Euros as well. So, yeah, big fans of this one.
I think it's quite unique actually in some ways.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the generic, turning money into building stuff that generate resources to turn into money to, like, the core is the same, but it does feel different in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I think it's the kind of supply chain thing, because you have to have dairy in order to make cheese, and you have to have deployed cows in order to make meat, and you also can have cows to make the dairy, and it's all in kind of a big resource loop of what you can produce and create and fulfill.
But yeah, so I just think that we think it just doesn't change very much. I think it's maybe, I don't know if it'd be more fun and more players, but...
Well, we have played at 3 and 4, right? It just...
No.
Fun, bit because you're all together, but not anything gameplay-wise.
It doesn't change. So that's why we've put forward Clans of Calendonia for this list. So yeah, check it out if you haven't already.
So next up we have Red Rising, the newest game from Stonemaier Games. It's a hand management combo builder set in the popular dystopian book series universe of Red Rising. You're going to start off with a deck of cards or a hand of cards, and there's a game board, and your turn is basically going to consist of playing a card from your hand, usually doing an associated action on that card, which might get you a bonus or allow you to take other cards or move cards around the board. And then you're going to take another card when you're done doing that, and that will get you some kind of bonus. There's various ways to score victory points, so you might move up the fleet track or gain a helium resource. And then at the end of the game, you're going to add up the core value on each of your cards and then add up any bonuses at the bottom of the cards. And this is where the combo builders come in, because the conditions at the bottom of the card are going to require you to have other certain cards in your hand. So perhaps you need another pink card, or you need a certain character to score the additional points.
Yeah, so this is one that it goes from 1 to 6 players. And so you might think that there's going to be a lot of difference, but we really didn't find too much difference between playing with 3 or 4 or 2. Unfortunately, this is one that we haven't got up to 5 or 6 players with, but we recently did a review of this, and we said there that we're not sure we'd want to, because this is a light, quick, snappy game, and it's also one there's a lot of luck in it. I think it's a game that people will enjoy or they'll really hate. I think, if you can play it because you find it fun, you'll have a very good time here, and this is important to know. It's not, it's no Sleeping Gods, right? It's not this really high quality, like everything's seamlessly put together. You have randomness. Like if someone gets dealt a really good hand at the beginning of the game and a really bad hand, that bad hand person is very disadvantaged. And the point is, if you have 5 players, the game's going to go on for a lot longer than if you have 3 or 4 players or 2. And I don't know if I'd want it to go on for that long, basically. So already you have this thing where we find it better at lower player counts. And then it just didn't really feel any different, did it? We thought it would feel a lot more different.
I was quite surprised. I thought there maybe would be more cards on the board, because there is also a mechanic to like add more cards rather than just play and take. And I thought, the amount of cards on the board might change, or just something might be harder to get back cards that you've played that you want to get back, or you spy one in a certain area that you want to take. Maybe it's a bit harder, but it just didn't play out like that when we played at the 3 and 4. And it was quite surprising. So, I mean, even if it did, it's still something we really enjoyed playing at 2. When we first got it, I think we played really quite a lot of games in quick succession. It's quite addictive. It's something you can play 2 or 3 games of quite easily.
It's just, for us, we just found it to be a really nice filler game, I think. Because if you play at 2 or at 3, it's under an hour. The turns are very quick. It's just something nice to play and kind of talk over. And so, I mean, this is something that, again, really enjoyed it too. Very happy to get it out. It's not that I would save it for 3 or 4 players or something.
No.
But so that is Red Rising. coming on to Sleeping Gods. This is the hot new game that everyone's talking about, a narrative-driven storytelling experience where you are the crew of the Odessa, I believe the ship is called.
The Manticore.
The Manticore.
It's Captain Odessa.
That's why, yeah. Thanks for the correction. So the Manticore, and basically you're traveling and you get warped into this alternate world. I'm not really sure if it's alternate or what it is really. But anyway, you're there and you have to awaken some sleeping gods, hence the title, to get home. And it's very much like a classic video game RPG, where you have a big map and you go around and you collect quests, and there's things on the map you can interact with, and usually you're talking to someone or maybe fighting some monsters. And it's very well written, it's very story heavy, you'll be reading long passages. It's a bit of pick your own adventure where you'll make decisions and it'll affect like which challenges you need to do. You know, if you're tied up, do you like cut your ropes on a sharp rock, or do you like burst out of them or whatever? And then you'll have two different types of ways to do that challenge. But yeah, so this is for 1 to 4 players because it's story driven. So why is it good at 2 players?
Yeah, I think for us this is something that we would, much to prefer to play at 2 and wouldn't want to play with more players, because we both quite like being involved in each of the turns. Mm-hmm. So because of the way the turn structure works, one of the players will take some ship actions, do an event, travel somewhere on the map usually, and then read from the storybook.
Yeah.
So because of this, one person's turn could be much longer than the next person's turn, because it really depends on how long the passage of writing is in the story, which options you choose, whether you come into a battle scenario, and then the next person just might go to port and buy things from the market.
Yeah.
So the turn time can be a little bit unbalanced. So for us, if that was with 3 or 4 people and it's going to take a long time to get back round to your turn, maybe we just prefer to be a bit more involved in the action all of the time.
Yeah, it's nothing worse than, like you say, moving the ship one space and buying one card and being like done, and then someone reads a story and makes all these like epic battles and decisions for the next 20 minutes, and you're like,
exactly.
Kind of thing. And then also there's still 2 more players left, kind of thing.
Yeah. So it's just something that we prefer to do it too. If you're someone that's more happy to sit back a little bit and not be too worried about actually being the one doing the actions, then it will probably be fine, but we're maybe just control freaks.
Yeah.
That being said, I do feel like because all of the players are so engaged in the story, so even when it is Farrell's turn and maybe he is reading out a long passage, because the players can also get involved in any scenarios and battles and skill checks that might happen, you do stay really engaged and it's quite fluid. Sometimes it is easy to forget whose turn it is, because you're just so engaged in the story. So that's something to consider as well. Yeah,
you can always help other people. Anyone can activate adventure cards, which give you like one-time powers and stuff, and things like this. So you're right, it's a good point that it's very fluid. So so again, if you have 4 players, sometimes it can just become this mishmash of everything happening, and everyone, because if you have a combat on someone else's turn, everyone gets a combat cube, and you all have a go basically, unless you want to negate it to someone else. So this is, I think personally, for me, I prefer it at 2 because I like to be a little more engaged. I'm very much a reader, so I just prefer to read the story more often than have it read to me 3 times out of 4, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And see it because I can visualize it better. And
you're the one choosing which branch of the path to take, so it depends how much you want to be the chooser. And
at 2 players, what we're saying about it evens out a bit more. If someone has a bad turn or where you do nothing really that turn, then someone else one of you is gonna have to have the same kind of turn in a few turns. It just balances out more than it would at 4 players, 3 players. But so Sleeping Gods, this is a good game. It's very well written, a lot of love in this. We'll probably do a review of it, but we haven't yet because we just want to complete our first campaign. But yes, this is good for any player count, really, 1 to 4. We prefer it at 2.
Dependent on your group, I think.
Welcome to our bonus round of 2-player games. And the reason we've included this one in the bonus round and the outro is because it's actually only for 2 players at the moment. And that game is Undaunted Normandy. But they are going to release an expansion very soon, I think in a month or 2, that allows you to expand it with up to 4 players. Mm-hmm. So at that point, it will be able to play at 2 and 3 and 4, I believe.
And it can be legitimately in this list.
Exactly. But yeah, just as a little bonus game, this is something we've really loved, despite not expecting to. Yeah. Didn't think we'd hate it, but didn't think we'd be so taken by it.
Yeah.
And it's basically World War II simulator deck building game. And basically you have a troop of soldiers and they're all represented by cards. And you have a set-up scenario and somebody will need to go over there and capture this, whereas the other player might need to go over here and do that. And you draft these cards into your deck and you draw randomly each round and you play them. And the soldiers let you do actions on the board. And it's one of these games that is very, very simple to learn. The actions that the cards do are very simple. Mm-hmm. The ebb and flow of gameplay is extremely simple. But yet with that, you can know how to play within 5 minutes. But the complexity that the scenarios give you and the vast amount of cards and their different actions.
Executing your battle strategy.
So you get a lot out of a little, basically, and I think it's a really great game that we really enjoy.
Yeah, it's really brilliant, and I think the expansion sounds really exciting. We've really enjoyed obviously playing it 2 players because it is a 2-player game, but I would love to play it 2 versus 2. I think that would be really
so much fun.
Cool.
So yeah, this is if you're just looking for a 2-player game, even if you don't think you like a little World War II simulator, I have to say we recommend it because I think if you're the convert for this game, then that says it all, really.
Yeah.
It's very stressful, though. You should know that. Extremely stressful. But we'd just like to say thank you for watching, and we hope this is helpful. I'm sure we'll do another one in the future.
Yeah.
And we have reviews for many of the games we've talked about that we will link below. And finally, we'd like to say again, if this was helpful in any way, it would mean a lot to us if you could subscribe, like, or interact with us. Tell us your recommendations and tell us what you think of ours.
Yeah.
And yeah,
usually there's 2 doggos in the videos, but one of them is not feeling very well today, so she's on the floor in a strop. Yes. Didn't want to be in the video.
You might have heard her moaning in the background of some of these
Many apologies.
clips. But I just want to say thank you very much for watching, and we really appreciate it, and we just hope this was helpful.
Yeah.
See ya.
Bye.